Jesus chose 12 apostles to start his ministry. You can read about this in Luke chapter 6 verse 13. The wages of sin is death. Romans chapter 6 verse 23. Eve is the first mother mentioned in the Bible. You can read about this in Genesis chapter 4 verse 1. Shepherds and the wise men came to visit Jesus when he was a small child. You can read about this in Luke chapter 16 and Matthew chapter 2 verse 11. And the fifth one, Samson lied when he was asked to reveal the source of his great strength. You can read about this in Old Testament, Judges chapter 16 verse 15.
Now the sixth Bible fact is Psalms is the book of the Bible that records many of the hymns written by David. We can find this in Psalm chapter 1 to 150. The ark saved Noah and his family from the disaster called the Great Flood. We can find this in Genesis chapter 7 verse 7. And the eighth one is Jesus caused pigs to run into the sea and drown to show that he has power over the evil spirits. Matthew chapter 8 verse 31 and 32. The ninth one is the 10 commandments were written on 2 tables of stones. We can find this in Deuteronomy chapter 5 verse 22. And the 10th Bible fact is man was created from dust of the ground. Genesis chapter 2 verse 7.
11th one we have is during the Last Supper, Jesus washed the feet of each of his disciples, and you can read this in John chapter 13 verse 1 to 20.
And the 12th one is God asked Jonah to take his message to Nineveh city. Jonah chapter 1 verse 2. Jesse was King David's father. Ruth chapter 4 verse 22. And the 14th one is blasphemy against God, the Holy Spirit, is the only sin that cannot be forgiven. You can read this in the book of Mark chapter 3 verse 29. The Holy Land is given a number of names in the Bible. In the time of Abraham and the Exodus, it was known as Canaan, and the original inhabitants were known as the Canaanites. The second fact is Canaan became known as the Promised Land because it was the land promised to Abraham and his descendants, and also Israel because the descendants of Israel, which is the another name of Jacob, settled there. The third fact is when the kingdom of Israel divided into two, the northern kingdom kept the name Israel while the southern kingdom was called Judah. David was descended from the tribe of Judah, which had chosen him as their king from the beginning. The fourth fact is when the Israelites first came to Canaan, it was a cosmopolitan center of international trade with strong fortified cities. The hill country, however, was relatively unpopulated. And the fifth fact is the land of Moab, Ruth's home, was a strip of arable land in Transjordan, lying between the Dead Sea and the desert, with the Ammon River to the north and the Jared River to the south. So the sixth Bible fact is Caesarea Philippi was in northern Palestine on the southern slopes of Mount Hermon. It was outside the Galilee and was the capital of the province ruled over by Herod Philip. The seventh Bible fact is when commanded to go to Nineveh, Jonah headed for Tarshish in the opposite direction. Tarshish was located in the south of Spain, 2,000 miles away from Palestine. At the time of Christ, large Jewish populations could be found in cities such as Rome, Alexandria, Antioch, and Ephesus. Paul was a diaspora Jew from the city of Tarsus in Cilicia. The ninth fact is archaeological excavations at Ur, the city from which Abraham came, show that 500 years before the time of Abraham, Ur was a wealthy and important city. Intricate works of art in gold and other precious metals reveal a standard of workmanship rarely surpassed in latest days. So the last fact from the Bible is after the death of Abraham's father, Abraham and his wife and nephew traveled to southern Canaan about further 450 miles. And the last fact today we have from the Bible is the Gospel according to St. John is the Gospel that appears last in the Holy Bible. You can read this and you can find this in Matthew chapter 1 to John chapter 21.